This is my property, this is Mr. Cooney's property, and this is my path and front yard. I'm going to show a couple landmarks here so you know what you're looking at. Mr. Cooney's cottage, Mr. Cooney's metal steps that go down into the creek. I had a trailer here for many years, and a cabin, the white cabin up on the hill, and there's a distinctive rock down on my property in the creek right here. Unfortunately, I had water damage back in 2010 where I live, so I don't have actual photos from back in the day, but Matt Klein gave me some photos. I thought these were relevant. These are from 96 to 98. Here we have inner tubes and just cut the grass. Here I am on my grandmother's mower. Again, this is between 96 and 98. Here we have a golf club leaning against a car. We used to have a little par 3 set up on both sides of the road. I joined Facebook in 2008. I formed a company called Mindseed Pictures. We did a couple different projects. One of them was a film where we filmed different locations. One of them was my cabin. Here's where the dates are on most photos. And I should point out, on posted photos on Facebook, the dates could be different days later, as you can see here. This is coming up to my cabin, and this is Mr. Cooney's house here. We filmed on all of my property throughout the winter. We also filmed on Mr. Montgomery's property and Mr. McLearen's property. We film everything at night. There was an article in the paper. It was a post-apocalyptic film, so the sun was supposed to be blotted out. So everything that we film that's in the movie was, dark. But as you can see, there's plenty of behind-the-scenes stuff, and that's the link on YouTube. And this is typically what a photo would look like, where you can't see the background. However, I do have behind the scenes and crew photos. There's the white cabin there. This is after a shoot the next day. Here we have Tim Knuckles, Rob Rucker, and Greg Buckley standing on my property. And you can see here, I must have told them where the property line was. And the train on the other side of the creek. This is a sequence from May 2nd, 2009. It's important to watch the time here. I take several pictures of blooms and blossoms. I'm with Greg Buckley, Jennifer Berletic, and Matt Kleespies. And at 1:40, I capture Mr. Cooney's house in the background. There's no one there. 8 minutes later, he arrives with his riding mower. I take a couple more photos, and here we are at 2:06. He's cutting his grass. Take a few more photos, and by 5:42, Mr. Cooney is gone. Obviously, myself and 3 other people can see him and hear him cutting his grass, so it would seem to reason that he has permission to be there. This is a photo 4 days later from Mr. Cooney's steps. This is my shoreline. This is Jennifer Berletic and Greg Buckley on Mr. Cooney's property. This is my dog Draco on my shoreline. This is my property here, and this is the rock that I pointed out earlier in the video. Here I'm at the bottom of my path. This is the tree that my 3 crew members were standing next to, and here it is again in this photo. And you can see Mr. Cooney isn't cutting my grass or dumping in my yard, and he just cut his grass 4 days prior. And this is my driveway right across from Mr. Cooney's house. In 2011, I won the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette garden contest for large garden. I'm the only person to have won this twice. The article mentions my French Creek property, which was the original large garden that I actually built first. Here we have 2013, an old friend of mine recognizing my shoreline. Here's a post from 2014 talking about the stones we brought from French Creek back to Pittsburgh. It was also mentioned in the Post-Gazette. And here's some photos of John Shook's truck full of these stones from 2010. And of course, his truck was down my path to get these stones. I also have been holding a Nipi ceremony since 2009. That's one of the 7 rites of the Lakota people. This is mentioned in all 3 articles, and yes, I used my path to retrieve these stones. Me and Kim got married in 2013. This is our wedding announcement. We got married right off our property in the creek. The photo is of our shoreline. Mr. Cooney's steps would be about here. This is our wedding license confirming the information, and a few photos from that day. October 2014, I have some photos from the road. Here we are in November 2014. This is my white cabin. Here's the view out the window. You can see the top of my path right here. And you can see that I have to hang my no trespassing signs up with the ladder. Here's the first major damage to my path. The next year, I asked Mr. Cooney about this damage, and he denied any knowledge of it. Here's some photos from December. This is my driveway. And here we have more photos of the damage. Here we are, March of the next year. I believe I repaired this damage sometime in April. Here we are down at the bottom of the property, the white cabin in the back. Looking upstream, Mr. Cooney's property's up this way. And the previous year, Mr. Cooney planted this tree in my yard. Here's me and Draco on the bank of my property, April 20th and August 17th, and again August 27th. Me, Kim, and Matt Klein after cutting grass, and a couple photos from that day. Summer of 2017, we had two guests, Chad Smith from Boston and Maya Rose from Mexico. Here's a post where I call my shoreline my front yard, and here's some photos of my front yard. And you can see here, this is the year that Mr. Cooney started dumping grass on my property. It smells worse than it looks, and I've been cleaning it up since 2017. Across the creek from my property are flat rocks that we'll hang out on. Here's more photos from a different time that August. And I finally found a photo of me using my path to get to the creek. This is the opposite direction of Mr. Cooney's. My property's right here. Post from November 9th in my front yard. This is the second major damage that was done to my path, and Rob Rucker would have helped me reseed that earlier that spring. These photos are from the summer of 2018. This is the railroad across the creek from my property. To get there, we use my path, we use Mr. Cooney's steps, we go upstream, we cross the rapids, which I call the Buffalo Crossing. They used to do something with sand across the creek, and the concrete works are still there. Later that year, we get puppies, Shaman and Ronan. Here is Mr. Cooney's house in the background. Of course, Mr. Cooney's steps. And the next summer, the puppies are all grown up. Here's a post from September, and here's photos from that summer. Mr. Cooney's steps, of course. And that branch matches that branch. And a couple more posts from October. November, down by the creek, Mr. Cooney's property is back there. That's my path, that's my white cabin, and a post from December that's obviously from that August. January 2020, looking downstream. These photos here are taken from Mr. Cooney's steps. Next, we're downstream by the big rock. Here's Kim across the creek by the flat rocks. Again, upstream. You can tell from Kim's clothes these photos are from different trips. Looking upstream, Mr. Cooney's steps are about here, and looking the opposite way, my property line's about here. Here I am on the flat rocks across the creek. There's the rock in the background, and that's my shoreline. And a few more photos from that day. Here's some posts of the dogs from later that summer, and here's some more photos from August. Most of these photos are self-explanatory at this point. There's the flat rocks in the background. And here's a different time from that same summer. Once again, you can see where we're at. Here we are, August 30th. My friend Chad Smith came back from Boston. Stayed at my property with his camper. Here's some relevant photos from that visit. Mr. Cooney's steps. We played frisbee with the dogs that day. I've showed a lot of this type of footage. Once again, it seems to reason that I have permission to be on Mr. Cooney's property. I'd also like to point out that there's no complaints about litter or dog droppings on Mr. Cooney's property. Here we are in October 2020. Around this time, we had been working on getting our trailer taken down. This is it in September, and this is it in November. And that's my path on the other side of the road going down to the creek. Here we are early summer on Mr. Cooney's property. Here's the post from August. You can see Mr. Cooney's trees have come down in a storm, and more than just these trees here, there were others. A few more photos from that day. Facebook post from September 6th. These photos are actually from the end of August. This time myself, Kim, and Chris Gazier enjoy ourselves on our property and Mr. Cooney's property, and you can see the downed trees in the background. These are the photos from the damage from September 6th. Unlike previous damage to my path and yard, this time I have irrefutable evidence that Mr. Cooney and his guests are responsible. We returned 3 days later and put up a chain blocking anyone from coming down our pathway. And just 5 days later, which included a weekend, Mr. Cooney would obtain an attorney and run off the document that he would later use as Exhibit C. Another post from September, and in November I sold my grandmother's riding mower to a collector. A few more fall photos, my front yard. Our path is back here. Mr. Cooney's cabin is right here. More fall photos of my property. See the white cabin, and down to the leaves are falling. You can see the cement structure across the creek. And here's a previous photo time-stamped on Facebook. This is the opposite direction of Cooney's, and February 20th, winter photos. There's my cabin, my property down by the creek, the white cabin, my path. This photo was taken 21 days before the sheriff knocked on my door and handed me Mr. Cooney's lawsuit. I want to show some past damage photos from the other side of the road of my property. These are bullet holes in my white cabin, broken windows on my other cabin, and of course the white cabin door has been kicked in several times, along with the trailer door as well. This damage here is from the 4th of July weekend of 2021 when Mr. Cooney had guests up, and this cabin was in the process of taking down, so it's more vandalism than breaking and entering. As you can see, the windows were broken, a propane tank was thrown through the screen door, and the cabin door was kicked in. The damage to my cabins and trailer has always been concurrent with Mr. Cooney having guests. I also want to point out in the photos that we've seen earlier, Mr. Cooney's trees, here they are in 2021, and now they've washed up on my property in 2022. I just wanted to point this out because during the pre-trial conference, Mr. Cooney had said that he wanted to get a tree company to come down and take care of some trees on his property. And I just want to point out that when he needed to get trees taken care of on his property, he actually did not. And I also thought it was a little odd that he would say that within a week or so of red X's showing up on my trees.